Hey everybody, this is Chris with Overclockersclub. It is time for something cool from EnGenius. Today we have this really nice switch from EnGenius. It is a cloud-managed hybrid switch. It is the ECS2512FP. So this is an 8-port multi-gigabit layer 2 plus managed PoE++ switch with 4 SFP plus slots. So there's a lot going on here. So this is Ingenious Cloud enabled, and I've talked about that in the previous reviews for other Ingenious hardware, but we'll hit on that again here in this review. It has 8 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports, 4 SFP plus 10 gigabit slots, so you have to use SFP modules to use those. Again, we'll talk about that here a little later. Provides a complete lineup of layer 2 plus management features. We've got IEEE 802.3 AF, AT, and BT. Those are all different levels of power for power over Ethernet. So that is all supplied on all 8 ports with 240 watts of total PoE budget. Hybrid switch mode supports multiple management options. So the package contents, you've got the switch, power cord, a RJ45 console cable, rack mount kit, and a quick installation guide. So, as I usually say, since this is a business grade or business class switch, this is not something that the average consumer would ever probably use. It'll work fine in a home environment, but this is really more of a business enterprise type of switch. So looking at the little box that's in there, there's your RJ45 console cable. Most of the time you probably won't need that, but they do include it. Here's your main power cable. I shouldn't say most of the time, it just depends on the application and how you're setting this up. So you may or may not need that. Some little rubber isolator feet to go on the bottom of the switch. Some mounting screws here for the included rack mount kit. So you got 2 little angle brackets for that. So again, we'll set this off to the side. Here's your quick installation guide. If you've never used anything from EnGenius before, it's really good to sit down and read through this so that you can understand how to set the switch up, how to log into it, and how to get rolling with the Ingenious Cloud. So there's a lot of good information here. Of course, all of this is available online if you go to the Ingenious website and you have any questions. They have a lot of nice little helper videos to get you rolling. So the switch itself here. That thing's pretty heavy. Of course, given the specifications. So again, this is a PoE switch. So the box has a pretty good squash on that corner, and it looks like this is the corner that may have taken a little bit of an impact, but I'm sure the functionality is okay. Okay, so looking across the front of the switch, so right here is your console port. That's where you can connect to it with this special cable if you need to access it out in the field. So we'll take a quick look here up close at everything else. So you've got a power LED, you've got a fault LED, you've got a PoE max, so if you hit the maximum power draw on one of the ports, you'll get that lit up. There's a LAN mode, so there's a LED for that. PoE mode, you've got an LED for that. Over here is your LED mode, so you can push this little button here and basically turn your LEDs on and off. So you can go to LAN mode or PoE mode by pushing that little button. A little tiny reset button right there. Usually use like a paper clip or something to push that. And then here are all of the ports, and again, all 8 ports here are power over Ethernet ports. And then we come to the SFP plus ports. This is where you would use a special module. Now, if you're not sure what an SFP module is, it's one of these little guys right here. Now, this particular one is only capable of running at gigabit speeds. It'll plug in here and it'll work, but it won't run at 10 gigabits. You have to have a module that is sized for that capacity. It'll look just like this, except it will just run at the 10 gigabit speed. And I'll show you how the fiber connects over here to this end. So basically you can link this switch here to another switch using fiber optics. And pricing on these, it just depends on what brand you get, but of course your 1 gigabits are much less expensive than your 10 gigabit. And then you also have different ranges that you can select for transmitting over short distances or over very long distances. Okay, so the first thing you do is get the Ingenious Cloud to Go app installed on your phone. Then you register for an account. After you have all that done, you can add this device or register this device to your Ingenious Cloud network. After it is registered, then you can power it up, plug the power cable in back there. It takes a couple minutes to come up. You can connect it to your network either with an Ethernet cable, doesn't matter which one of these ports you use, or you can use one of your SFP modules if you have one, and you can use any one of the 4 ports. Connect your fiber to the other SFP module at the other end of your network or the other switch that's using an SFP module, and then the unit will start to communicate with your Ingenious Cloud. Usually it looks for a firmware update, which is what this one did, and it downloads it, does the update, reboots, takes it a minute to come back online. You'll see the notifications on your phone app or your browser app that basically tell you that it's offline, then it's online. And after about 5, maybe 10 minutes after the updates, you are rebooted and you are ready to go. Now you'll notice there are 2 cooling fans here on the side. They are exhaust fans, so they're pushing air out of the case. So my guess is there are probably, yeah, there's a very large vented portion here on the other side, so you get that cross flow. Cool air comes in from this side, is pulled through the unit and exhausted here. Are the fans loud? I mean, I can hear them, but keep in mind this is typically going to be in a server room or in a server closet, so a little fan noise, who cares, because no one's really going to be in there to hear it. And there's a good chance it will be drowned out by all the other fans on all the other networking hardware stacked up with this. And the holes here on the side, there are 4 on this side and there are 4 on the other side. They are meant for these little brackets. This is for your rack mount kit, so these get screwed right there to the side using the included screws. Right there, a little bag of screws. You can attach those if you want to and mount this in a rack. And I have it flipped over, so I'll go ahead and put the little rubber feet on it for now because I'm not going to actually be mounting it in a rack. I'll be setting it on a tabletop. So the dad joke for the day is you can mount it in a rack or you can mount it in any country for that matter. Okay. That was not as funny as it sounded on the inside. Okay, now we are ready to set it down on any table. All right, so I'm getting this all set up here so I can show you some of the testing I'll do as far as moving data back and forth. But anyway, one thing I do want to clarify is I know I talked about the Ingenious Cloud, and the first thing you do is get the app on the phone. You do not have to use the Ingenious Cloud software or get the app on your phone. The switch will work without it, but I personally really like the Ingenious Cloud, and I can't think of any real reason why you wouldn't want to use it, but you do not absolutely have to. Now, the way I've got this set up here, so I've got the Ingenious ECS2512FP switch down here, then I've got a QNAP switch on top. This is just to show that I can move data around at 10 gigabits a second, because this has 10 gigabit connections, this has 10 gigabit connections, and this NAS unit here from TerraMaster also has a 10 gigabit Ethernet connection on the back. In fact, I'm going to move it up here on the QNAP switch. And I'll talk about your different SFP modules here in a little more detail, and how to set them up to get the most out of your system. And also, if you're not familiar with it, so these SFP modules use SFP Plus, I should say, if you're 10 gigabit. They use fiber optic cables, but they do make, if you have an application that needs it, they do make, this one here is from TrendNet, but they make an SFP module here that is actually capable of connecting to an Ethernet or an RJ45 connection. So if you have an application for that, they do make an SFP module. And an example of where you would use this, I actually have, let me show you here. I actually have a 10 gigabit Ethernet adapter right there. This is from TP-Link, and that is connected to my motherboard. And it is capable of 10 gigabit speeds. So, for example, if I wanted to connect to the switch, and the switch only has SFP ports that are at the 10 gigabit speed, well, then all I have to do is plug this in. Like that. And then I can switch over here. So right now I'm on a 2.5 gig connection. And I can move over, plug this in, and it takes it a moment to wake up. And there it is. And you can see we are connected at a 10 gigabit connection, which you can see the two green lights there are an indication of that speed. Now, this particular switch here from QNAP, all of these ports here are up to 2.5 gigabit. These are up to 10, so I've got an SFP port, a regular RJ45, another SFP port, and another RJ45. Now, I can only use one or the other, so since I'm using this port, this one is disabled. But here I can use either one of these. I can put an SFP module in here or use Ethernet. But you can't use both on this particular switch. And a lot of switches are like that. They share ports. And even though there is a 10 gigabit port on the back of this NAS unit, since I'm using standard 3.5-inch hard drives, you are limited by the speeds of those hard drives, which is considerably lower than anything a 10 gigabit can deliver. But the advantage in this particular case of a 10 gigabit port on here is that multiple users can have access to the drives without saturating the bandwidth of a single gigabit connection. Okay, so right now I'm connected to one of the 2.5 gig ports, and I like to make sure that I'm actually running at the speed I think I'm running. So one way to check that is I use iPerf3. You can set that up. I'm using two different computers here, one as a client, one as a server, and this gives me just sort of a reality check. So yeah, we're running just a tick below 2.5, which is normal. And then I'll go ahead and plug this into the 10 gig port. And let's see what sort of speeds we get. We should get just a little below 10, probably in the 8 or 9 range. Yeah. 8, 8.5. So that's pretty normal. So this just gives me, like I said, a reality check that my connection speeds are what I think they are. So let's talk about PoE budgeting, or power over Ethernet. So ports 1 through 8 here are PoE capable. These 4 SFP ports are not. So that means that you can supply power through all of these ports to a device that is PoE compatible or PoE capable. So we've got a total of 240 watts available across all these ports. Of course, you're not going to try and pull 240 watts from a single port. What that means is you've got a set of standards that the switch complies to, and it's called 802.3, and there's AF, 802.3 AT, and then 802.3 BT. So those are the 3 standards. So AF is the smallest one, which means you can draw up to 15.4 watts from a port, and that's just considered PoE, or power over Ethernet. The next standard is 802.3 AT, which allows up to 30 watts on a port, and that's considered PoE plus. And then the final one, which is the latest one, is 802.3 or 802.3 BT, which allows up to 60 watts on a port. So when you have a 240 watt budget across 8 ports, the more higher wattage devices you plug in, of course, each one subtracts from the available wattage for the other ports. So you just need to keep that in mind, and make sure you look at each device that you plug in and sort of get an idea of how many watts that device requires. Okay, so I have a couple of different types of devices plugged in, and I want to show you these LEDs right here sort of in action. So when we look down here, When I look at this angle, it looks like both of these LEDs are lit up, but if you actually get down here in the line of sight, you can see the bottom one, or the PoE mode, is actually turned on. And what that means is any device that is using power over Ethernet, or actually drawing power through that port, the left-hand side LED is solid, the right hand is activity, so you can see there's stuff going on with this port, but this one is drawing power, and these others are not drawing any power. They're just simply moving data back and forth. Now if we hold this in for a couple of seconds and then release it, you'll see the LED there switches to the top one, which is LAN mode. And again, you've got to be kind of in direct line of sight. If I come up here, it sort of fades out. But anyway, in direct line of sight viewing, you can see that the LAN mode is enabled. And what that does is you can look at the flashing LED. I can get this thing to focus. There we go. The flashing LED on the right again indicates activity, and the amber, or sort of an orangish LED on the left, indicates connection speed. So this port, and this one, these are all connecting at below the maximum 2.5 gigabit connection speed for these ports 1 through 8. So these are probably connecting at 1 gigabit. This one here, however, is connecting at the maximum 2.5 gigabit, because we can see the LED here on the left is solid green. So that is how this functions. And again, this port over here is to connect to a console. That's sort of the old way that was done years ago, and it's still relevant, but in the field, if you needed to tie into this switch without using the Ingenious Cloud, you could basically plug into this port with a console and access the switch that way. And I took the top cover off so you don't have to. I do not recommend anybody taking the top cover off. There's nothing in there that you need to service or access. There are some hazardous voltages and some sensitive components, so do not take the top cover off. So that being said, I will point out just a few things here. I'm not going to go into all the circuitry and how it functions. I just want to go over just some real basic stuff here. So this is your voltage regulation circuitry here. It is sort of isolated from everything else. So your 120 volts comes in here, and it drops it down to whatever voltage is the, I guess this is like your motherboard, whatever this main board would use. And you can see it's sort of in its own little tunnel. So air is drawn in from the right, passes through the little tunnel, picks up the heat from the circuitry, and it is exhausted by this fan here. And the second fan, of course, it is pulling air in also from the right-hand side of the case, the vented side. And heat is extracted and removed through these heat exchangers here, or heat sinks, and across the rest of the circuit board. It of course takes advantage of the airflow, and then this fan exhausts it also out the left-hand side of the case. So that's pretty much what's going on the inside, and we'll get the cover back on. And like I said, do not do this yourself. Okay, real quick here, this is the Ingenious interface when you get your switch or your access point or whatever registered. You get an account going, and then you can access this remotely. You can do it on your phone, or you can do it here through your PC. So this is your main dashboard here. You can sort of see what's going on. You can mouse over a lot of things and get information about what's going on with your system or with each individual device. So you can also look at, now you can see I have 3 switches, so you can look at each switch individually. You can look at each access point. You can also look at all of your clients, and you can see what's going on there. And I like the way I can come over here and look at the topology. So depending upon how many devices you have, I can zoom in here. So you can look at each one of the devices that's connected to your system, to your network. And when you mouse over it, it sort of gives you the information about it. You get your IP address, your MAC address. You can look at your connection speed between the devices if you want to sort of make sure things are set up properly. Look at your speeds between your access points and your switches. So very useful. And over here on the left, you can see you've got your dashboard. You can manage your access point switches, map and floor plans. You can sort of set up little maps to show where all of your devices are located. Here we've got firmware. You can check out your alerts. You can set up your VLAN. Access control. This is just your general settings. You can look at your event log. There's a lot of useful stuff you can do here. So here's the actual switch. that we're looking at today, the ECS2512FP. I can look at all the ports and see what's going on, see how much the connection speed, see if it's using power or not. PoE basically is activated or not. You can turn ports on and off. You can block ports. Your system configuration, you can go through and set everything up over here. Again, here's your port control. Let's see, there's your VLAN. If you want to set up a VLAN, you can do mirroring. PoE schedule, so you can turn certain ports on and off as far as their PoE capability. Link aggregation, so you can team ports together. And then information logs here. So like I said, there's a lot you can do here with the Ingenious Cloud Network. And here's your client list. This is everything I've got connected currently to my Ingenious network. And I've reviewed a couple of other access points and switches, and you can check out those. I will post the links in the description, but I also drill down into the Ingenious software in a fair amount of detail. Now there's also a Pro package that you can upgrade to. The basic is free, no licensing or anything required, and you get quite a bit of functionality there. But if you want to purchase it, it looks like it's $50 per device, access point or switch per year annually. That's the current pricing, but the Pro here, you can see you get some more features and some more support, so you can scroll down through here and check out all the different things that Pro gives you and see if that's worth the extra money to you. And you know, some manufacturer websites surprise me because they have such poor information about their product, but that is not the case here with Ingenious. There is so much information here on the main page for this particular switch, for example, and it's this way for all of their products. But there's a lot of information up here. You can click the specifications, you can look at all of the details there. You've got the overview. Here are a lot of resources for more information about switches in the Ingenious Cloud, the Cloud Network Management Data Sheet, all that good stuff there. Scroll down here. Actually, here's the firmware. You can check out the firmware if you need to. The SFP modules that work with it. And down here, this here is the Ingenious Cloud that I sort of talked about a little bit. This goes into a, let's see, that's not the one I wanted to click on. Where'd it go? Get started. Here we go. So this walks you through step by step getting the Ingenious Cloud set up and running. And like I said, you can access everything on your phone. You can see what's going on, monitor and manage your Ingenious network. So right now, pricing, this is on Amazon for like $8.99. I found it on CDW for like $7.49, so there's quite a range in pricing. So if you're interested, you do want to do a little bit of homework or shopping around to get the best price. And of course, at that price point, you know, clearly this is not meant for the casual home user. I mean, it'll work just fine in your home, on your home network, but this is really geared towards a small business, medium business, enterprise, that type of an application. And while the switch by itself has a lot of capabilities, it's very powerful. To me, the deal maker is the Ingenious Cloud software and the ease of use, accessibility, and management that you get through the Ingenious Cloud, whether you're using your PC or you're using your smartphone. So if I were just looking at the switch by itself, I would give it like the Overclockersclub Gold Award. But when you pair it up with the Ingenious Cloud software, to me, it is worth the Overclockersclub Editor's Choice Award. So this is Chris with Overclockersclub. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.